Hi, I'm Judy Tyabji. Thanks for joining us today. I hope you had a great weekend. And today we embark on a whole new year. And so this year there's all kinds of things we're going to share with you. And what we're really hoping is that the things you find here are things you won't find a lot of other places. I think today's show is a good example. Today we're going under the heading of politics. Now, as you know, we've looked at recall in the past. In fact, there's something to add to that today. We've also looked at the MAI, the Multilateral Agreement on Investment, and we've talked about unity. Today we're going to talk about public accounts, and this is not something that you'll see usually on the front page of papers or at the top story of the TV news. However, it's going to affect a lot of us. The Public Accounts Review came out just before Christmas. This government is especially good at leaking important documents or putting out important documents at a time when no one's paying attention. And these documents did come out. They have some information for us. What we'd like to do first is refresh your memory on some of the highlights of budgeting in the last year or so. Let's take a look.
Winning that government has been hard work, and it was incredibly close. But friends, we did it.
It's been a confusing exercise tracking the finances of the province. First, in the last election campaign, we were promised a modest surplus.
How does this affect the way you govern now? How does this affect the way you approach things?
I think obviously you have to be humbled by the results. I think clearly there's some concerns about some of the things we've been doing. I think on the debt and deficit question, I hear that loud and clear. I think I have to be, I'm going to try to be very conscious of what everybody's saying and try to represent all of British Columbia.
But the pre-election promise turned into a significant deficit as the Clark government brought in its first budget.
Honourable Speaker, this is a budget that has been developed in challenging circumstances. The projected deficit is the smallest this decade at an estimated $185 million. Well, there's no doubt that the last two budgets in which we did not meet our targets have created a issue of credibility for the government. And I, as Minister of Finance, of course, share in that. I think that's why it's important that we show that we have learned a lesson.
But what lesson has the government learned? The release of public account figures just before Christmas adds to the confusion, creating more curiosity than clarity. The province's consolidated revenue fund shows a jump of debt to $26.9 billion, up about $1 billion from the year before. Another government account, the government summary statement, is at $28 billion, up about $1 billion. But the bottom line total debt at $29.2 billion is up only about $500 million from the year before. If you're having trouble following the numbers, you're not alone. Even the province's Auditor General has reservations about how the dollars are counted, noting that this year the government isn't including hospital, regional health, university, and college expenses. But no matter how you count up the dollars, the courts will get involved this year when the Help BC lawsuit against the government goes before a judge for a decision on whether the government lied about the province's finances in order to get elected. That case is back in court early next month.
No, I don't find it embarrassing at all. I think at the end of the day, it'll be a clear vindication because I've got nothing to worry about, nothing to hide. We've always been up front. We've always told the truth, so I'm looking forward to it. I think it's just a political action.
What do you expect him to say? I think that's the best you can expect to get out of Mr. Clark is that he's still not facing reality, and I think that the issue will be that when it gets to court, there'll be a chance for reality to be brought forward.
So we're going to review those numbers. We have our political panel with us, John Twigg and Mike Geoghean, to start off this working year of 1998. We want to hear from you as well. Some of you will remember, too, when we did our show on ferries, we actually presented to you the accumulated debt of the ferries. That's rolled into what we just showed you, $1 billion more since last year. And a budget coming up in March. Again, we'll be right back with your calls to this number.
E-teams are part of the BC government's plan to help create a brighter future for young people.
For a lot of kids in this program, it's their first chance at a real job.
It's kind of like a stepping stone.
It's about coming to work every day.
Protecting the environment is really doing something with love. Look what we've done.
The life and work skills that I've learned here, they've given me the confidence to go and get a good job.
What do you love about MeTV?
For me, it's sports.
Everyone has found their favorites.
so into history.
But alas, the MeTV free preview will soon be history. So call today to order. Then you can keep on enjoying all of MeTV's 16 great channels whenever you want, wherever you want.
For me, it's comedy.
Call 1-888-ROGERS-1 to get MeTV for as little as $5.99 a month. You could even win 50 grand. Be sure to order before the preview ends.
They'll make you smile. They'll make you laugh. You can't help but love these wacky babies. The cutest, funniest, most hilarious home video you have ever seen. Your whole family will fall for these cute, cuddly clowns. Wacky Babies is filmed by world-famous filmmaker Marty Stauffer. You've seen Marty's Wild America series on TV. Call now to order Wacky Babies through this special TV offer. Order now and you'll also receive Queen of the Ice, free. This special television offer is not available in stores. Your satisfaction is guaranteed. Call now. Now available around the world from Interwood.
Have your credit card ready and call 1-800-937-0874 or send check or money order to the address on your screen. Call 1-800-937-0874 now.
Never mind your own personal post-Christmas concerns about credit cards or extra debt. Today we're talking about public accounts and a report that came out just before Christmas that says that our public accounts are questionable. In fact, the Auditor General has 3 reservations about this, which is kind of unusual. Anyway, and we're going to talk about what this means and what kind of numbers there are, and I'm actually going to share with you what the Auditor General said in his report. First, John Twigg, Mike Geoghean, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to
all that kind of
all
stuff.
The listeners.
That's right. Viewers.
Viewers,
yes,
that's right.
radio listeners. That's right.
What
that's right.
They can see you.
They can see you, so good thing you dress up. Now, public accounts. Actually, I'm going to start with you, Mike. We saw in this backup piece about the government's track record on spending. Glenn Clark went into 96. The night of the election said, well, we've got to increase our credibility on this issue. And then, since then, problems, even this upcoming budget, we're expecting to have a deficit. Any of your comments?
Well, I think what happened is the government decreased its credibility. Obviously, when you know, as John has termed it, the fudget budget came out. The government, the NDP has yet to introduce and keep a balanced budget. That's something clearly needed to do. If you compare it to the track record of the NDP in Saskatchewan, there, the NDP is the most fiscally responsible, fiscally conservative, if I can use that terminology. And in fact, when the deficits and debts get racked up is when they've had governments other than the NDP in power. Here, because of some of the mythology and history around the Barrett government, both Harcourt and Clark needed to introduce balanced budgets. And in fact, one of the people who was a strong advocate of that was my former boss, Bill Barlee. And he kept talking about, let's see what other jurisdictions have done in terms of value for money accounting and whatnot. And in some jurisdictions, they were able to uncover billions of dollars in waste and get at that waste without decreasing services to the public. Because the problem is when you have top-down budget cuts, the first thing that will happen is the people running the hospitals and the administrations running the schools, first thing they'll do is reduce the number of hospital beds, increase class sizes so that the voters go screaming back to the politicians and the politicians loosen up the purse strings.
Right, they'll go after the services first.
Yeah, you have to get at those organizations in a more systematic way, and they haven't made that attempt.
Well, here, let me just, that reminds me, and I'll ask viewers too, if you have ways you think the government could save money, let's hear from you on that. That should be quite provocative, and we'll keep track of what you have in mind. John, public accounts came out. What are your $1 billion more when this government took over? Was it $18 billion they inherited from the Socreds, and in 7 years it's almost double.
Yeah, I think actually, well, you could say it was 16 or 20. They've got rubber accounts now, but
what does that mean?
No matter how you account it, whether you use the summary fund or the consolidated revenue fund, the bottom line is the debt is going up. They still haven't balanced the budget, as Mike was saying. They have never balanced the budget. And I don't think they're going to be able to do it this year. They're on track, they say, for a deficit of $185 million. What does that mean? I think it'll probably come in at minus $500 million. And in real terms, putting everything together, it's probably $1 billion.
Yeah, well, that's a lot of money, of course, because they can hide debt, and that's something that BC governments have been good at, not just the NDP, the Socreds before them. I'm going to, just before we go to the phones, let you know the Auditor General, and many of you will remember him from this program, actually, when public accounts came out, and it gets reported out basically a review of what happened. They analyzed the last session's debt and the numbers that are being put out in the public record. Now, the legislature in BC has not sat since the first week of July and won't sit again until almost the end of March.
Might be early this year.
Might be early this year, yeah. Let's see. Anyway, this is what he said, because this is unusual for an Auditor General to put reservations, and he says, the government has excluded regional hospital districts, public health care organizations, universities, colleges and institutes, and school districts, and this is an exception to the government's general accounting policies. And he says that these organizations should be consolidated into these financial statements as they were last year, and total financial assets would increase by 1.2 million, but total liabilities would increase by 1.25 million. And that would be, he has million here.
Oh, pardon me.
Yeah. And so that says that there would be an increase in net liabilities. His second reservation, the government, by presenting outside of its net deficiency, states its loans for the purchase of assets recoverable through future appropriations as assets of the province. What this means in normal English is they borrowed money and said that the loan is an asset, which is a great little accounting practice here.
With a few years' future removed.
Right. He says now if they had been accounted as they had previously, the net debt would increase by 4.9 million and expense for the year would increase by 254 million, resulting in a similar consolidated net expense for the year.
That's 4,900 million.
What do I have here? Okay, yes, you're right. 4,000, yeah, you're right.
So 4.9 billion.
Right, 4.9 billion, that's right. So anyway, that's obviously a serious difference in terms of our net deficiency. Okay, and capitalization of tangible capital assets, which is land value, should be included in the ascertained value of the land held by Consolidated Revenue Fund as in 96, and that works in our favor. I guess the long and the short of it is he says there's some questions around the way they've reported out, and in the case of the loans, that's over $4 billion difference, almost $5 billion difference.
Well, the other thing is, and I think the Auditor General is also looking at this, is that, you know, in even when the Socreds were in power, there has been historically an underestimation of expenses and overestimation of revenues in the lead up to an election, and that's.
But now we're not leading up to an election.
Well, no, now we're not.
Well, in theory.
In theory, but I guess we'll have to see what happens. But so these sort of shenanigans have been ongoing, particularly in this province.
Okay, we're going to take some calls and then we'll hear more from our panel. But first we'll start with Warren in Victoria. Hi, Warren.
Yeah, hi. First, I'd just like to say that I'm no fan of the NDP for various reasons. However, I'm even more concerned about what the Conservative Liberals will do to deal with the deficit. It seems to me that clearly they will slash social spending in order to avoid ensuring that the highest income earners and corporations pay their fair share.
Okay, well, I think that's an interesting point, actually. When it comes to the dynamic of the two big parties in the legislature, for example, a lot of people said that in the 96 election, one reason the Liberals didn't win is because people were afraid that they'd be worse on social spending than the NDP.
Yeah, one of the things that really hurt, hurt the Liberals in the last
election.
That
for you, John.
Yeah. They put out a pro forma budget and left out education.
A pro forma budget meaning this is what we're going to spend money on, and they didn't have education on there.
So, I think there is some legitimate concern about, what would the Liberals do? Would it be even worse? I know some of my relatives are worried that the Liberals would be even worse than this crew we've got, which is pretty bad.
Okay, let's take another call. We'll talk to Keith now in Port Moody. Hi, Keith.
Hi.
Hi, go ahead.
Yeah, I just thought I would, you were looking for suggestions how to save money for the taxpayers, and I guess one of the biggest taxpayers ripoffs, and I note one of the biggest, is the West Coast Express.
Right.
When you talk about the government cooking their books, if you could ever find out the true facts about that operation, I mean, it's only accommodating 2,500 people per day in a population of 300,000 people in the northeast sector.
Right.
It's been operating 2.5 years and hasn't gained one iota of ridership. So, that's one that should be totally investigated by this government. But if you could ever find the truth out about it, you should receive a star for it. anyhow,
research,
that's
yeah.
my viewpoint. It's
Okay.
the NTP's icon, and you're never going to get rid of it as long as they're in there.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you for that. Now, the West Coast Express actually became quite controversial during the ferry talks because they're saying it's being subsidized roughly $13 per passenger. You're trying to look it up, aren't you?
More, yeah, I was going to see how much is in here. And now, some of it is the West Coast Express is so new that this is the old numbers, 96, 97. It may not be in there.
Right.
But yeah, the caller's absolutely right. They hide things off budget. They do things without accountability, and West Coast Express is a classic example. I think it's a spin-off or a subsidiary of transit.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of Glenn's pet projects when he was Economic Development Minister. But I mean, you also have to factor into that accounting is you know, if you have whatever the projected ridership is going to be, if you have them back on the roads, what's going to be the cost in terms of having to upgrade the infrastructure in order to get those people from the valley, you know, into jobs downtown and back again, the commute? I mean, it's not a zero-sum game. It means, you know, you're going to have to spend more money on highway upgrading and what have you.
Well, ironically, on the island here, I think the E&N Railway is looking for that kind of capital investment.
Yeah, commuter rails are a good thing, but, you know, it has to be managed well, and it, you know, a huge subsidy like that, you have to wonder.
Okay, let's take a quick call from Ian in Sydney. Hi, Ian.
Hi. Just got a question on reducing spending and stuff. I manage a restaurant, and just for an example, government services like the ferries,
right?
Wages of being $18 an hour to start.
Right.
That's kind of high. Like, I couldn't run a business that way. So how can they run a business to lose money on that kind of money? You know, if they're paying that kind of wages.
Right. Well, I think you've raised a very important point, especially because the BCGU are in contract negotiations right now, meaning that all of us taxpayers are right, the public sector, and they've threatened job action, I believe, and who knows? Even though the BCGU are traditionally NDP supporters or affiliated, there could be some serious movement on that. But he's saying that they're asking for more money. What is the reality of that? I mean, is it realistic for government to be paying that kind of...
good family supporting jobs is the line the NDP uses.
Right.
And, you know, I guess we'd all wish that, but I think they're trying to take it out of thin air instead of making it a market responsive, to some degree, user pay. I don't know. It's a political decision. Should society subsidize the wages of some of its workers because they're in unions?
I don't know. It sure makes it hard for the private sector.
Yep.
Now, we're over time for a break. We're going to come back. We'll take more of your calls. And if you have examples like that, we'll certainly look at them, and we'll try to look up the West Coast Express and maybe even some of the salaries. Actually, the Auditor General did make a note that expenditures on salaries were up dramatically. I'll try to find that number for you during the break. We'll be right back.
Good luck.
There's 127 million.
Tyabji is brought to you in part by Metro Lexus Toyota, leaders in customer satisfaction. Starfrit, where new ideas are born, presents the Citrus Express. It peels the fruit, sections it perfectly, and extracts the juice of large oranges or grapefruits in a single step. Check these value-added features: a citrus corer, skid-proof rubber base, pouring spouts, and a stainless steel blade. The Starfrit Citrus Express. There's nothing else like it. Starfrit. Why settle for less? Walk into the 1998 Pacific International Auto and Light Truck Show, and you could drive home a winner in a brand new 98 Honda Accord Coupe V6, valued at over $36,000. To enter, fill in the ballot in the Vancouver Sun, or drop by the BCTV display at the show. And while you're there, check out the over 560 new automobiles, from the latest in luxury to sports utility vehicles and much more. Drive home a winner at the Pacific International Auto and Light Truck Show, January 9th to 18th at BC Place. Brought to you by the Vancouver Sun, CKNW, and BCTV.
The RE/MAX Home Tour is on the air. All week, the RE/MAX Mobile Production Studio tours Vancouver Island, videotaping a cross-section of the finest properties listed for sale. Watch the RE/MAX Home Tour Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. It's here on Check TV, Vancouver Island's home tour.
Sometimes you get a craving for great classic rock. Rock 101 plays a better mix of great classic rock. When you need classic rock, only one radio station gives you a better mix of great classic rock. Yeah! Vancouver's better mix of classic rock, Rock 101.
Here's a tip for safe winter driving. Allow yourself a little extra time. driving blind is dangerous and leads to traffic accidents. Be sure you clear your car's windows of heavy dew or frost before you set out. Use your headlights during daylight hours and slow down.
And today we're talking about BC government public accounts. Our guests are John Twigg with Twigg's News Service and Mike Egan, West Coast PSI. And just for those of you who haven't heard the term public accounts before, it really is just a general accounting of everything government spends. It's a lot like the deficit and the budget and that kind of thing. And I want to wish a belated happy birthday to Martin Lester and Sylvia Bragagnolo, a husband and wife in New Westminster, who happened to be born on January 2nd. And they sent me a funny fax on that, and that's got to be a fluke. Anyway, we're going back to the lines, and we'll start with Kathy and Burnaby. Hi, Kathy.
Hi.
Hi, go ahead, please.
I'm a frequent user of the BC ferries, and where I think they could have saved money is in not doing research and development on these new jet ferries, but basically just trying to get the ferries, the people on the ferries back and forth.
Right. Well, I think that's an excellent point. I think that the fast ferries, people have no idea how much that's really costing us.
Well, again, it was one of Glenn's pet projects when he was Economic Development Minister and Minister responsible for BC Ferries. You know, the BC Ferry Corporation makes a significant profit on its major runs between Victoria and Vancouver, but the catamaran ferries, that's a $400 million, $500 million cost. The idea was to try and get a world-class shipbuilding industry happening again in Vancouver.
But it's so specialized.
Yeah, and there's also stories coming out of there. Like one tale I've heard is that the engines, to save money, they're using a couple of extra engines there was supposed to be a third Spirit class ferry. They're going to use those engines on the new catamaran, and the word is that these engines are underpowered, and so they won't be able to, for the first catamaran, they won't be able to fully load it.
So it won't even be a fast ferry.
So there's all sorts of grumblings about that there's.
Well, I heard all things about the grade of aluminum that they were using, and certainly
there's certainly serious misgivings about that, and if some or all of these stories turn out to be true, I mean, it's going to be disastrous.
Yeah. Just before I forget too, that I have to give Russ Francis credit in his article on accounting for BC, where he actually follows up on public accounts, and he says the government's total salary bill jumped by $127 million to just under $2.2 billion in salaries being paid out last year.
But there was a wage freeze.
Yeah.
But it's also because what the Socreds did was they offloaded a bunch of positions and contracted them out.
Right, to the private sector.
Which actually is illegal in terms of the Federal Income Tax Act. So there's lots of games.
Okay, let's talk now to Anne in Victoria. Hi, Anne.
Yeah, hi. I have several concerns, and then I will give you some suggestions.
Okay.
One, I would like to know how Sahota got off on the Sahota tapes, and why did the two NDP lawyers who got him off get made judges?
Okay.
And how did Bob Williams get out of the Williams Gate? And what about Hydro Gate and Nanaimo Gate and the Highway Gate for the unions?
Wow, you raised a lot of...
This was a joke on the TV or on the radio in Edmonton this summer.
Right. Okay, well, thank you very much. You've raised so many different things.
I don't think she's an NDP supporter.
Well, I mean, I think that a lot of people do wonder how, I think the Hydrogate, that's a very important question, because I don't think that's been properly resolved, and we've got hundreds of millions of dollars right now. Okay, who wants to do this? I think it's so bad.
I'll do the Sahota tapes.
I don't know how they got off the hook on that
The lady has a very interesting list of some of the worst sins, shall we say, of the NDP government going back to the Harcourt days.
Right.
There's a lot of loose ends hanging around. How do they get away with it?
The Nanaimo Commonwealth.
I think that's what she asked. How do they get away with it?
I think that in the Nanaimo Commonwealth,
we let them.
Yeah, that's exactly right. They were voted back in after that, and I think that's what let that one go away. But certainly, the hydro issue, we still have a lot of investment out in Pakistan that has not been followed up on. And boy, if I had a big team of researchers, I'd certainly put them onto that. That's probably what a lot of it boils down to. Okay, let's talk to Barry in West Vancouver. Hi, Barry.
Hi, Judy. How are you?
Fine, thanks. Go ahead.
I'm not an NDP supporter, but I do have a suggestion for them, and that is if they put those slot machines on the BC ferries going back and forth between Vancouver and Nanaimo, they do have video games for the kids, and they do have some low-grade cafeteria. In other words, they could make room for them.
Right.
Then the people that want to use the slot machines could actually sit sit on the ferries going back and forth between them, the two places, and the revenues from the slot machines running somewhere between $150 to $200 per machine per day could actually help offset the deficit that the BC ferries run. And this is something they should consider.
All right, well, that's certainly a suggestion that I know has been floated. In fact, Mike, I think you were still a ministerial assistant when that idea came up.
Well, yeah, it was certainly an idea that was looked at, but like I say, the major runs are already making a profit. It's the, out to Galiano Island and the Gulf Islands. Those are the runs that...
Maybe he's saying that it would subsidize BC ferries. You'd have to get over the whole idea, the controversy around
I mean, I think there's a bit of an... Personally, I think it's a bit of an ethical problem in that if you choose to go to a casino to gamble, I mean that's fine, right? And hey, I've done that. But when you're getting on a ferry to travel, to Vancouver or back to Victoria, I mean, is that something you want to be confronted with?
Yeah. Well, I'm one of those that has a lot of problems with gambling, but I think in this case I would be more concerned that,
Are you a problem gambler?
No.
Oh, that's what it sounded like.
No, I only play the ponies,
I
John.
make money on pie.
We are going to take a break in a sec, but I think one of the things you have to be concerned about there is it would be like the lottery fund where it doesn't actually go where it's supposed to, health and education. And now, if you'd like to get more information about John Twigg's report, and in this, actually, he's one of the people who did report out on public accounts.
That's the first one.
Twigg's News Service, phone and fax, 250-385-2042, and the email is twignews@pacificcoast.net. And although I don't always agree with what John says, it still is a good source of information. Thank you for not agreeing. We'll be right back.
You've always known how your touch can comfort your child. Clinical studies have recognized the positive effects of Vicks Vapor Rub for cold symptoms. We call it rub therapy. Combined with your loving touch, Vapor Rub can relieve cold symptoms while comforting your child. The warmth of your touch helps release medicated vapors which quickly relieve your child's nasal congestion and calm coughing from a cold. It also eases aching muscles. Vicks Vapor Rub puts the power to relieve in the palm of your hand.
You would expect a cleanser to take your makeup off, but how about helping to reduce the signs of aging? Tests on Olay's first anti-aging cleanser prove it can be done. Its formula, containing beta-hydroxy complex, enables this advanced cleanser to help stimulate the skin's exfoliation process, helping to reduce the signs of aging. And the name? New Daily Renewal Cleanser from Oil of Olay, proof that cleansing can help reduce the signs of aging.
What do you love about MeTV?
For me, it's sports.
Everyone has found their favorites.
So into history.
But alas, the MeTV free preview will soon be history. So call today to order. Then you can keep on enjoying all of MeTV's 16 great channels whenever you want, wherever you want.
For me, it's comedy.
Call 1-888-ROGERS-1 to get MeTV for as little as $5.99 a month. You could even win 50 grand. Be sure to order before the preview ends.
Be warned to be under sword.
The bare facts are simple. Dodds takes a bite out of the grisly price of furniture. On Finlayson across from Mayfair, you'll find the best buys for the living room, dining room, bedroom, or kitchen. It's Victoria's original low-overhead furniture store. Don't hibernate. Get out to the #1 value furniture store, Dodds Furniture. The bare fact speaks for itself.
Be warned to be under sword.
And we're going to try to take quite a few calls in a row because we all tend to talk too much. And so let's first talk to Reed in Coquitlam. Hi, Reed. Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I would like to know where the government's going to come up with their 1-point-some billion for their island highway and their 3 to 5 or 600 million for the pulp mill.
Yeah.
And on and on. The ferries, I understand, have gone from 70 million. They're up 90 million per ferry, so now they're 160 million.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a friend that's working there, and he's working weekends at double time.
Right.
Because of poor quality aluminum and poor engineering.
Right.
Who's going to pick up these tabs?
Well, I think we know the answer, don't we, Reed?
Yes.
But, yeah, okay, well, thank you for that. I think he's raised some
Well, I don't have a problem with the Island Highway. It was something that was decades overdue.
And you live on the island and you drive on it, but
and
that's
boy,
a little
it sure
biased.
cut my commute.
It's saving lives, too.
It's saving lives, and it was choking off the economic development of the Mid-Island by having that paved camel trail.
But then a lot of people, like that one woman who was calling in talking about the contracts and the problems with the contracts.
You know, the Island Highway's been financed far better than the Coquihalla, for example.
Hey, Coquihalla, excuse me? That's paid
At
for
least it
itself
has
with the
well,
toll.
yeah, pardon me, that's a bad
In
example.
fact, you
It has
guys
a
are
toll.
benefiting from the
But
interior.
the Island Highway is partly financed through the surtax on gasoline.
Okay, well anyway, I think he raised some, the other ones that he was talking about, the Skeena Cellulose one, we're actually going to try
out
and
of
put a
forced
show
renewal
together.
money.
Yeah, okay, which was not supposed to go there.
That's correct.
Let's talk to Teresa in Port Coquitlam. Hi, Teresa.
Hi, Judy.
Hi, go ahead.
I'm very concerned about ICBC paying out billions of our premium paid dollars to
Right.
hire international firms of lawyers,
Right.
not just Joe Blow lawyer on the corner,
Right.
to defend the guilty perpetrators of road carnage. And the victims and survivors' families go broke trying to hire legal reps to fight for remedies to the huge medical issues and financial devastation that results. ICBC justifies its deficit by misrepresenting who's actually receiving all the money.
Yeah.
They claim that it's going to claimants, but in fact it is not. And I know from personal experience because ICBC's paid Bullhauser Tupper huge money for 8 years to defend a teenager who ran a stop sign speeding and broke my neck, my back, both shattered my kneecaps, did multiple nerve damage, and the list goes on and on.
No, in your
ruined
case,
my life.
Have you been to at least see your MLA? Have you tried to pursue
I
it?
have, Judy, been to every MLA representative of every party, including you, before the last election.
Oh, okay. Hopefully I at least responded to your letter. Yeah.
You know, I don't, nobody wants to tackle ICBC.
Okay.
They get away with it because their power is so great. And I would really like to know if you have any suggestions of where all of us victims of the NDP government can go.
Okay, well, I think that the lawyers issue, that's something we talked about beforehand. Government, whether it's ICBC or BC Hydro or the government itself, lawyers are costing a lot of money. She's absolutely right.
Yeah, but I mean, your best defense in that situation is to get a good lawyer, and
well, she can't.
But I mean, hey, at least in this country, you can hire lawyers on contingency fee basis, and with the kind of injury she sustained,
Yeah.
I mean, you're looking at a very sizable settlement, and
Well, okay, I think in her case, if she can find a contingency lawyer, and that's probably true, then she can probably get something. There again, whatever she gets will be carved up between the contingency lawyer and someone else.
But I mean, in countries like Britain, they're not allowed. So if you want to sue a government agency, you're having to shell out tens of thousands of dollars out of your own pocket, and most people don't have access to the legal system.
Right. And as far as let's talk to Stephen now in North Vancouver. Hi, Stephen.
Hi, Judy. Throughout the world, if you have a hospital, it automatically builds an emergency helicopter landing pad. BC is one that totally ignores that concept. Very few hospitals have day-night landing pads. With a proper network of helipads at hospitals, you could move patients quickly from a car accident scene to a hospital. If the hospital's overloaded, you can move patients between hospitals.
Instead of
ICBC would
ambulances,
save hundreds of millions of dollars a year in healthcare cost if we could just get a patient from a hospital to a trauma center, or from an accident scene to a trauma center.
Well, that's a very compelling comment. I had never even thought about that, but it makes sense. I keep hearing stories of ambulances going back and forth, and it takes so long. Any comments on that?
Well, I mean, given the nature of our province, which is, we've got densely populated urban centers and then relatively empty regions, I mean, it makes sense for our healthcare facilities to have those helicopter landing pads in order to evacuate people. And
that sounds like something that would be a value for dollar audit possibility in healthcare, because I know they just cut air ambulance dramatically about 4 years ago, and that was not a good idea. Let's talk to Brian in Victoria. Hi, Brian.
Hi, Jude.
Hi, go ahead.
A couple of points here. To cut costs, the MLAs have an allowance of approximately $22 for a breakfast.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. Well, actually, it's $150 a day.
Oh,
whether they have breakfast or not.
Yeah, well, I know that the breakfast is allowed $22. So, I mean, they have no conscience. I mean, and that's whether they travel or not, whether they eat at home or not. If they eat at home, they still get paid the $22.
Well, yes and no. Yeah, I mean, the per diem, that's right.
That's right. So, and the ferry workers, why not let them pay their fares when they travel on the ferries? I mean, they start at $18 an hour, and I talked to the minister, and he said, well, the trains and the airlines do it. So what? They're making money.
Yeah.
You know, like the unions, the workers have no conscience. $18 an hour to start, plus benefits. I mean, you should see what I'm doing for $9.75 an hour.
Yeah, well, I think that's the important thing. People are looking at what they're making in the private sector, and they're paying taxes to support this incredibly expensive government. We'll talk about the recall. MLAs get $150 a day non-taxable per diem, which is a lot of money. And there are also MLAs who have full private practice when the House is not in session, which in BC it's 6
But you know, the $10 or $20 we're paying, we as taxpayers are paying extra for MLA's breakfast is nothing compared with the tens of millions that we're pouring down the fast ferries, for example, which is just one of dozens of these boondoggles.
And you've got the West Coast Express there, so hopefully we'll look at that in the next section. Well, let's talk to Christopher quickly from Victoria. Hi, Christopher.
Hi, Judy.
Hi.
Yeah, I was hired by Aboriginal Relations at Transport and Highways quite a while ago.
Right.
I was fired in a hurry for what I'd call truth-telling or questioning the legal positions of this government.
Right.
I was respecting the law, and the Attorney General's office was not.
Right.
Now, I received about $15,000 for not working for 6 months.
Right.
And I'm curious to learn how many more people have had to sign documents saying they'll never call you and talk about it, and how much money this adds up to.
Okay, because that's like a waiver. Okay, well, that's a
I'm in the phone book, sir. You can call me 385-2042.
In reference to your own.
That sounds like a news story.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That is definitely a news story. Whether or not he'd want to ever get work again in this town might be part of the reason. Whether or not he wants to come forward with his name and picture. That is important for people to realize that there's all kinds of stories we don't hear about because someone has to quietly waive their right to pursue this in order to get what they're already owed.
Secrecy clauses typical of this government.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate. As for Teresa in Port Coquitlam and the ICBC story, send me some information now. If you sent it to me as an MLA just before the last election, chances are I couldn't get to it because I didn't get returned to office, so nothing I could do there. But send us something here. Recall, yes. There are 2 new recall petitions that have been filed today with Elections BC. We don't know who they are. They are not necessarily government MLAs this time, and we're hoping to hear by the end of the day who they are. As you know, there are 2 confirmed recall initiatives underway in the north, Prince George, Paul Ramsey, and Skeena Helmut Giesbrecht, both NDP MLAs. But the 2 latest ones we don't know yet.
And the 2 up north end on February 3rd.
That's when they have to have their signatures in. Okay, and no word yet on how close they are. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back with more of your calls.
New Ultra Downy introduces Downy Care. You get more than fluffy softness. Now it helps keep clothes looking like new.
Keep the new look of it. That's the way you love it.
New Ultra Downy cares for bright cottons in the rinse cycle. Over time, it helps keep them looking more like new.
Keep the new look of it. Take the best care of it. Only Downy does it. Come on in.
And only Downy has the Ultra Downy ball. Toss it in for Downy's best fabric care ever. Downy Care.
Now get Touched by Love, a new 36-song collection of the most popular soft rock hits.
I love you. I honestly love you.
Sometimes when we touch, you'll feel the magic of love in every song. Touched by Love is not sold in stores, so order now. Call toll-free now for Touched by Love. 2 cassettes $19.98, 2 CDs $26.98, plus $4.95 shipping. Call now.
Because you want both sides of the story.
But these guys have to make a living.
Because you want more than a score.
You know, he's one of the all-time greats, and I guess we'll find out.
Because you want to be informed and entertained.
The eye in the sky, Sean Webster.
Oh, they're getting slicker again.
Because you deserve the best choice for live, local, late-breaking news. CKNW 98. All you need to know.
And we're talking about public accounts. The corollary to that is the economy. And Mike was nagging during the break that he wants to say something on the economy. Whining. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, I mean, I think in terms of seeing the recent poll numbers where the NDP have dipped and the Liberals have raised, I think what that reflects is a growing unease about what's happening in British Columbia's economy. We used to be number 1 in terms of per capita economic growth out of all the provinces. We're now number 10. And the government's done a masterful job in terms of spin control and communications, but at the end of the day, that can't save you. You have to look at, as the old line goes, it's the economy, stupid. And if people, as I think they're getting a sense that other jurisdictions like Alberta and Ontario and our neighbors to the south are doing well and we're not, they're going to start saying, why aren't we booming?
And we need to know that in the news release that Andrew Penner put out just before Christmas, he said there have been 220,000 new jobs in BC. Our economy's grown, everything's wonderful, and we're doing better than the rest of the country.
But that was over 5 years.
Yeah, I know it was. But I'm talking about spin doctors.
Well, the point was we were doing, but now we're not.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, look at all these calls.
Let's talk to George in Honeyman Bay. Hi, George.
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead.
As a former civil servant, I have observed bureaucrats very rarely suffer the consequences of illogical and thus costly decisions.
Right.
It is time they did. And that's just the comment I want to make. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that. Oh, well, that would be interesting to hold the bureaucrats accountable for consequences.
Well, there was a good move to try and do that, and it got bogged down in the Public Accounts Committee. The government has sidestepped that one, too.
Now, that's unfortunate, because it would be interesting to see if some of the people behind the scenes would actually be held accountable for the decisions. On those polls, by the way, just keep track of this. For the last 4 years, when the House is in session, the government goes up and the opposition goes down. And in the fall, the opposition goes up and the government goes down.
It's the reverse.
And it's the reverse. That, in most places in the country, that's not the way it works. But in BC, it is. Let's talk to Dan now in Ladysmith. Hi, Dan.
Hi.
Hi, go ahead.
One of the guests you have made a comment a little while ago about the wage expenses in the province and how they had gone up drastically, and then he chuckled and said something about wage freezes, and then you just dismiss it.
Right.
And you move on to something else. Well, why doesn't anybody bring up the issue about management wages, which do not get frozen?
Okay.
Us union employees have had wage freezes in effect since about 1990.
Right.
And we've basically been at the same wage level since then, while management is going up at 10, 12%.
Okay.
Nobody seems to have any interest in that. And then you've had some people calling in talking about the big money that union people make. Well, he should take a look at the amount of income tax we have to pay and the amount of pension money that we have to pay that we don't want to pay into.
Right.
And if anybody in the government was held accountable to the pension money, I would imagine they would all be in jail at the end of the investigation.
That's true, and that's tomorrow's show. Well, thank you. I think you've raised something that, and let me just clarify. Actually, what I had talked about was an article that said the salary bill, now that's not for wages, that's for salaries, has gone up by $127 million, so that government salaries are at $2.2 billion this year. And that's when John Twigg made a comment and a chuckle about the wage freeze, which is the other side of things.
Yeah. Now, the caller is typical of a large number of unionized people who say, hey, we got a fiscal crunch, take it out of management. We're seeing that in the school districts now, where the teachers want job security and wage stability, and they want these middle managers in the system to be fired, basically. And the middle managers say, hey, no, we set the budget.
Well,
let's find efficiencies. It's all NIMBY, not in my backyard.
Well, that's taking out the turf, but I think he's saying that, we should look at the manager's salaries too.
I agree.
Okay, let's talk to Dennis now in Victoria. Hi, Dennis.
Hi. Previous caller you had alluded to the bingo gate, hydro gate, et cetera, and how nothing seems to happen on these issues.
Right.
I think that the media has to take some responsibility for that, because I don't think you're putting enough pressure on them.
I think you're
if you compare,
right.
pardon me, if you compare the pressure that you put on the Van der Zalm government with the pressure that you're putting on the NDP.
I was not a member of the media.
No, I know, I realize that. You generally, the generalized sort of media.
You're right.
But I think that, I really think that we the people, have to be told that these things are going on.
Yeah.
And that's your job.
And I agree with you 100%. I think that the bingo and what's going on BC Hydro, and especially BC Hydro, that we should definitely have the media on.
But, the other thing people should keep in mind, because I was working for the NDP in opposition in the Vander Zalm era, and a lot of the stories that appeared that the media had, they were stories that were researched and developed by the opposition party of the day.
Yeah.
And so, in other words, the opposition would gather the information, fire it out, and then the media would, do further studies and reports on it. And if there's a lack of stories on the government, then I think that you go back to the opposition. The opposition has this attitude, oh, well, that's the media's job. The official opposition has a job, that's the media's attitude. No, it isn't. It's their job.
Yeah.
If there's dirt to be had, it's their job to dig it out.
Part of it. It goes both ways.
And it goes both ways. But the other thing is, as you talked about the polling numbers, right? And what should happen when you have an effective opposition is their numbers should go up when the House is in session. That's why generally governments like to keep the session short. And so that, which goes back to the point of with Campbell, is this coming session, he has got to, get those attacks out there if he's going to show that he has the stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot to say on this, I know, but let's try and fit in Leon in Nanaimo. Hi, Leon.
Oh, hello.
Hi, go ahead.
I just have one question. It's something that's been bothering me in regards to all these small islands, the ferries, so forth.
Right.
Now, I wonder when these people are living, like say on Gabriola.
Right.
And I would like to bet, I couldn't even imagine how many nights through night, a month, that the crew is called out, held back, ambulances going over, and they're getting all this extra. Who pays for this? The crew working the Gabriola run must be making money hand over fist in overtime pay.
Okay, well, I hadn't thought about that. That actually also refers back to the
kind of
talking about
echoes
helicopters.
of the BC Transit, where the senior bus drivers get paid to stay on the reserve board. They get extra pay for not driving.
Well, those are the kinds of efficiencies that should be realized within the system. Yeah. We have to take a break. We'll be right back and try to get as many calls as possible.
It's Rolling Stone's Sounds of the 80s, the best songs of the 80s in one complete collection. Get Rolling Stone's Sounds of the 80s for just $9.99 on compact disc or double-length cassette. More than one full hour of hits.
Another one bites the dust. Another one bites the dust.
Then audition other Sounds of the 80s albums. There's no minimum to buy, cancel anytime.
Here comes the rain again.
Rolling Stone's Sounds of the 80s is not sold in stores, so don't wait. Call now.
To order Sounds of the 80s, call 1-800-417-5577. That's 1-800-417-5577. Call now or send $9.99 plus $3.50 shipping and handling to Sounds of the 80s, Department 7, Richmond, Virginia. Or call now, 1-800-417-5577.
Coming up tomorrow, we're talking about changes to the Canada Pension Plan. We'll also be looking at the Fletcher Challenge strike and some of the details behind that. And the University Model Parliament is coming up this weekend, and we'll talk a little bit about them. We're going to try to talk about the economy toward the end of this segment, so let's get as many calls in first. Craig from Mission, your turn.
Yes. Hello, Judy. How you doing?
Fine, thanks.
Good. Basically, to do with the accountable politicians.
Right.
I mean, when they're caught up in these wrongdoings and what have you,
right.
Hey, let's strip their pensions. You know, you turn around and you look at the money that they make. They get into some kind of confrontation.
Right.
The next thing, they're bailing out and they're still getting their pension.
Making
well,
lots of money.
that's garbage.
Okay.
We don't. If that was my job,
Yeah.
I'd be out.
Yeah. Well, I think that's an important point, especially federally. There's some very rich pensions. That always bothered me. The government get ousted. You guys.
Then you're going to spend all that time in Ottawa. I mean, God.
Yeah, so that's the punishment?
I'd never go to
No,
Ottawa.
but that is it. That's a good point, actually. Make them pay for it. You guys are being nice and quiet, I
quiet,
noticed.
yeah.
Shut up. Okay, yeah. Matthew and Victoria, your turn.
Hi, Judy.
Hi, go ahead.
Yeah, I just hear all these people complaining and whining about people making $18 an hour.
Right.
And, you know, they're against the unions. They don't like the unions. First of all, I'd like to ask any one of them if they'd turn down one of these jobs that pays a decent wage and has benefits.
Yeah.
And I'd also like to challenge any one of them to write up a budget that would outline to any young person how they could live on these lower wages they expect them to collect. Maybe how they could live and eat, possibly buy a car or plan to ever buy a house or own any property.
Right.
And myself, I'm a union employee. I'm not working right now. I work in private construction trades unions.
Right.
And I'm making less now than I was 10 years ago,
Wow.
if they'd like to know.
Okay, well, thank you for that perspective.
Well, I'm actually a former member of two different unions, the BCGU and the hospital, the restaurant bartenders, etc.
You don't
Local
even remember.
40.
You're
I
just
can't
making
remember.
it up,
Well,
yeah.
you know, whatever.
Yeah.
I was much younger then. But I mean, I think the caller raises some good points. But the fact is that youth unemployment has been increasing in this province. So. I mean, sure, it's tough to make a go of it on minimum wage. That's why the government has raised the minimum wage. But it's better to have a minimum wage job than no job at all.
But people need to know that the debt of this province is not because of wages. Even BC Ferries wages, that's not the problem with BC Ferries. The problem has been the capital cost in many of these cases.
The inflexibility prevents cost savings.
Of the wages?
The inflexibility
no, but I mean, most of the operating deficits have been due to health, education, and social services, and no government has made a serious attempt to get at the infrastructure.
I told you guys to keep it down during this segment so we get some calls in. Okay, let's talk to Val on Thetis Island. Hi, Val.
Hi. What the politicians fail to do for us, British Columbia, is that instead of asking us to invest for our needs in BC, they went outside and borrowed the money from New York, Hong Kong, or Frankfurt, whatever. Now we are then here and pay that mortgage out. We are losing $2 billion plus in these mortgages. But if we are invested, us, British Columbia, on our needs, those $1 billion, they would spread around the province. And we wouldn't be in this ordeal now. How's that grab you, people?
Okay, well, thank you. I think that's a good point.
That's my thing about BC independence and having a Bank of BC, and we can print our own money.
Oh, stop.
No, but the point is that the government that's why the government created BC bonds, buy BC bonds, and the other thing is they created the Working Opportunity Fund for those very reasons.
We are beholden outside
our
of
debt
the
is rising,
country.
but our per capita debt, our debt burden actually compared to other provinces is still relatively low.
It is, but having said that, we could be in a precarious position.
Yeah, it would be better to have our debt internal, there's no doubt.
Yeah, okay, let's talk to Rodney in Victoria. Hi, Rodney.
Hi.
Hi, go ahead.
It's about the BC ferries.
Right.
A lot of calls on ferries.
Hi, it's about the BC ferries.
Yeah.
I understood that this is supposed to be part of the Trans-Canada Highway.
Yes.
Now, what they've done is that they've built a bridge over the PI, and that costs close to $1 billion,
right,
or whatever. And I don't know how much the price is for the toll of that bridge, but I don't think it's the same price as what the BC ferries are.
Right.
And I want to know, why doesn't the Canadian government put some money into the BC ferries?
Okay, well, I think that's a legitimate question.
They do.
They do, but not a lot.
30 million or something.
Well, it's still more than the provincial subsidy.
Yeah, well, because they've been eliminating the provincial subsidy, but he's right. We don't get the same level of infrastructure subsidy.
And maybe that's something that we should be looking at in terms of, the Gulf Islands and someday maybe even right across the strait is what, the cost effectiveness of building a bridge or bridges. But the fact is how would islanders react to that?
Okay, let's not get into a bridge debate. We have to look ahead to 1998 and the economy, because in the fall of 98, this program is looking at doing some economic analysis. So.
Yeah. The outlook for the BC economy, it's going to hang in for the spring and the summer, and I think it's going to starting to get worse in the fall, and by December 1998, this year, we're going to be, a lot of us saying, my goodness, what have we done wrong?
Okay. That's pretty gloomy.
Yeah. Well, if that's true, then that is going to put the government in a very difficult situation. And one of the things that's troubled me is that some of the material that's crossed my desk from the NDP has talked about how Glenn Clark won the last election by swinging to the left, which is absolute nonsense. Glenn Clark won the last election because he was able to portray himself as being more pragmatic and less of an ideologue than Gordon Campbell. It was after he was elected that he swung to the left. And I think Clark and his advisors have to seriously evaluate that decision, because what people want is a government that governs pragmatically. And if they're not getting it, they'll throw that government out and go along with the next best choice.
Okay,
good stuff.
Both of you, very eloquent speeches. But and so looking at 98, obviously there's going to be, I think, a lot of controversy provincially.
Yeah, it's not going to go away.
And the House is going to sit March?
No, February.
You think?
It's good. Yeah, they're going to come back to do the Unity panel.
Yeah, they have to table the Unity report in February, but I understood that was just one day. But anyway,
okay.
We'll see. Anyway, so thank you both again.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, and if you'd like to contact us, this is how you can do it. You can write to Tyabji at 780 Kings Road, Victoria, BC, V8T 5A2. Fax 250-389-1226. Email us is tyabji@wic.ca, and our internet website with information from this and months of previous shows, www.checktv.com. And we'll be back after a quick break with My Opinion.
We don't all run half marathons. We don't all drink distilled water. But we all love bread. Dempster's Hearty Grain 100% whole wheat bread. Low in fat, no preservatives, and high in fiber, with 8 essential nutrients. And now, try Dempster's new premium bagels in 7 delicious low-fat varieties. They're at your grocery store, just a short jog away. Dempster's, deliciously sensible.
Some relationships have no end. Some conversations go on and on. Let them. BC Tel Affinity, with long-distance rates from as low as 14 cents a minute. It's the time to let your relationships grow. Be close. BC Tel.
Let your Victoria Symphony bring drama, excitement, and romance to your life.
Experience classic grandeur with conductor Rafi Armenian and violin soloist Moishe Hammer performing Mozart's Violin Concerto No. 5 at the Royal Theatre, Sunday, January 11th and Monday, January 12th. Call 386-6121 for your tickets.
Your Victoria Symphony, you'll love to hear us play.
Federal Finance Minister Paul Martin has assured us that the Canada Pension Plan will be there for those of us under 45, and now we're paying the price for it. What's behind this and what are some of the alternatives? We'll talk about the Canada Pension Plan tomorrow. Today we were looking at public accounts, and as we know, there's not good news when it comes to growing government debt. And some of you pointed out that some of the scandals behind the scenes are the responsibility of the media to expose. And I agree with that. But I also think that it's up to each of us to get a little bit more active politically to help pressure the government. There was one question from a caller who said she'd had problems with ICBC. How do we go after the government if we're a victim of government? Well, I've always believed that it's by getting involved and by putting pressure in the political arena, getting involved in the campaigns, that you can make sure that you're heard. It'll be very interesting to see what happens in the spring session of the legislature, because I believe that if this government cannot bring a credible budget to the House this spring, that the people will take to the streets. I'm Judy Tyabji, and that's my opinion. What's yours?
It's